So much for having me here today. And I'm pretty much going to tell you the story of how I became a software engineer. That's what I do right now. I work at a company called Amplify. It's an ed tech company working out of Brooklyn. But before I was a software engineer, I was a Latin teacher. I taught middle and high school for 11 years, Rhode Island, Nevada, Colorado, New Jersey, and that's what I thought I was going to do forever. And then I had this conversion experience in my last year of teaching that changed sort of everything and led me to where I am now. But I want to back up to that last year of teaching, because the whole story starts with a problem. And I think a lot of the important things that we end up doing, a lot of the cool ideas that we have, start with a problem. And you're like, I have this problem, nothing that I have right now and nothing that has ever been shown to me can solve my problem. Is there something I can make to solve my problem? And the problem that I had was homework. So you guys can probably come up with some of the problems with homework. From a student perspective, what are some of the things that can go wrong when you sit down to do your homework?
You don't know how to do it and it just confuses you even more.
Yeah, absolutely. What else? Yeah.
You can get distracted.
Okay.
That's what I was saying.
Nice, yeah.
Not wanting to do it,
Okay,
like at all.
absolutely.
If you don't get around to doing it, or any other problem that happens and you don't do it, you'll end up copying off of someone else and just won't learn.
Easy trap to fall into.
Sometimes you just don't have time for it.
Right, right. Any others? Yeah.
You don't have the teacher's help with it.
You what?
You don't have the teacher's help with it.
So you feel a little lost and you're like, what do I do? I can't proceed. Yeah. Has anyone ever done the homework and you come in and you're like, I totally got this. I filled out the whole worksheet. And the teacher's like, incorrect. Actually, you missed some core thing and now your homework is kind of off track and you just spent those 45 minutes of your time you can't get back. You spent those 45 minutes doing work that didn't actually help you so much. Has that ever happened to anybody? Probably, right? So there, yeah.
So we had this one teacher for math who would give us homework that we didn't yet learn and ask us to try to solve it, and then we would go over it in class. Except he never went over it in class. And I spent 2 hours on the homework and never got it right.
And that's 2 hours of your time that just flew by and you can't get back. Yeah, that sounds frustrating. So the problems that I had with homework, from the student perspective, I was frustrated that if a kid sat down to do the homework and didn't know what to do, let's say he or she looks at the notes and is still like, I don't know, what do you do? Then I guess you kind of fumble through it and that time is not really that useful. So what happens if a kid doesn't know how to do it? What support do they have in the moment? The other thing is, what if you're doing your homework and you feel like, okay, this is going okay. What if you make some small mistake, but you don't find out until, what, like 12 hours, 24 hours later? By the time you go over the homework in class, whatever you were thinking at that time, you don't remember. You don't remember maybe why you put what you put. It would be nice if in the moment you could get some feedback that said, oh, actually you need to make this little adjustment. And then in that moment you could be like, oh, I see what I did wrong there. And maybe you wouldn't do it again. So my problem number one with homework was, what happens if a kid doesn't know how to do it? My problem number two with homework was, I wish kids could get a little feedback so that while they're doing it, they know how they're doing and they don't have to wait 24 hours or 12 hours or however long it is to get my feedback. The problem I had from a teacher perspective, guys, I'm sure that like it's definitely more work for students to do homework than what teachers have to do to write the homework, but writing homework is awful. Teachers have to write all those worksheets, and then we have to grade all those worksheets, and then we have to like prepare all our lessons. So not at all to diminish how hard homework is for you guys, but homework is really hard for teachers too, especially if they're creating their own worksheets, which is what I did a lot. So I'm thinking, geez, I want my students to have worthwhile assignments, but I can't spend all my time writing them, writing worksheet after worksheet. So the first thing that I tried as a solution was, this solved some of my problems, not all of them. The first thing that I tried as a solution was these self-correcting Excel spreadsheets. I will make that much bigger. So, I was a Latin teacher, like I said. Are there any Latin students in the room? Yes, thank you. So, taught Latin for 11 years, and one thing that you have to do a lot in Latin is come up with forms of words. So the idea here was that this exercise is to give the forms of the word femina, which means woman, and so a kid would write an answer here, and if it was right, they would get the smiley face over there. If they put an incorrect answer, then they would still get the ... and would have to maybe look at their notes and keep trying until they got the smiley face. And then some of the other pages have this one is supposed to be a whole sentence, so you might, it's supposed to be the man walks, so you might write something, oh, you still have the ... You can put a question mark in this purple space and see the answer, so that you can be like, oh, shoot, I just didn't put the right verb ending on it. So then you get a little bit of feedback on what went wrong with your homework. The problem is, I had to write in all of these sentences, and then elsewhere in the Excel spreadsheet, I had to write down all the possible answers, hide all those, and then like lock the spreadsheet to try to prevent, you know, that thing that happens sometimes when kids look for a shortcut, academic dishonesty. So it was really laborious for me to create these. So that helped a little bit with the problems I was trying to solve with homework, but it didn't help enough because these were like super laborious to create. And the other problem is there are only this many questions. What if this is too many questions for somebody? What if this is not enough questions for somebody else? How do I design a worksheet that has exactly the number of questions that you need and exactly the number of questions that you need and that you need? It's an impossible task because I can only make one worksheet. So these were the problems that were on my mind that last year of teaching when the winter season arrived. And the sport in the winter season was basketball. If you didn't want to play basketball, you needed to find something else to do. And so these two senior boys offered a programming club. And they wanted to teach other kids how to write games. So I went as their student. And so there's these two boys and these 12 other kids attending this, and me, the faculty student. And they were teaching us C#, and I started writing some things in C# and thinking like, I can make a grammar exercise out of this thing. And so then I came into the problem, oh, but this only works on a PC, what do I do for my kids who have Macs, yada, yada, yada. Eventually, this programming club opened up to me the idea of creating a web app that my students could use to practice Latin. And this thing was going to automatically generate the questions that my students would do on the homework. I wouldn't have to write every single question. I wouldn't have to think, okay, I already asked one question of this type, I need to ask another question of this type, then of this type. Then I should circle back and ask the second type, then maybe the third type, then back to the first type. You know, I wanted a program that would randomize all that for me so that I could just program the structure I wanted, and it would deliver as many questions as my students needed in random order to my specifications. And so I had them doing, like, this is noun forms again, like that femina thing from the other side. So I would say, we're doing first declension words, and it would give them a word, and then they would go ahead and fill out answers. And if they got answers right, then there would be nothing over here. If an answer was wrong, then they would be able to see what the correct answer was. So this solved one of my big problems with homework. They got feedback, they got just the right number of questions, they would get through however much they get through. Work for half an hour, do however much you do. The other thing, these sentences, so we would learn some new topic, and they would get a Latin sentence, they would have to translate it, and then they would be able to see their answer and an answer given by the computer. And then they could decide, is my answer close enough? Did I basically get it right? And then the thing that was sort of the crowning fun of it is the zombie games. So this was vocab can be laborious to study, and what it takes to learn vocab is just a lot of exposure to the words. You just have to see them a lot of times. So how can I get my students to see these words a lot of times in a way that's kind of fun? So this is the zombie game. We're the zombie on the upper left. Down here at the bottom, it says I saved, and somewhere on here is a Latin word that means I saved. So we move the arrow keys to find the zombie and shoot the word, and then we get a new one. So that's the zombie game. And we had a lot of fun. One kid would I'd have them play in pairs. One kid would move the zombie, the other would shoot the zombie. You can imagine that led to a lot of no, up, faster, down, now. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun. So what happened was that over the course of that last year of teaching, I started making this thing that changed the way it felt to be in class for me. I didn't have to spend all that time writing all those worksheets. I came in and I was like, yes, my minion, give me the questions that I need to conduct my classes. And the computer would just generate these questions for me. If I wanted sentences, if I wanted forms, it would just do it. And I didn't have to put all that time in ahead of time to write in the questions. I could think, what kind of game do I want to run? How am I going to flow the class? How am I going to split up the groups? I could think about those things that teachers are supposed to be focusing on, how to make students comfortable, how to make sure they're learning, and not freak out over, I have to write all these worksheets. And it helped students a lot, because all of a sudden they had a tool that they could go home with, and it gave them the feedback, instant feedback that they needed. And if the kid was like, I don't know how to do this one, let's say it was sentences, let's say we're here, and they don't know how to do these questions. You can just see a bunch of examples. And what I've heard from kids that year and now from other students who use the site, I've heard them say, oh, if I just look at enough examples, I kind of catch on a little bit. So this, I think, helped to address the problem of what happens if a kid doesn't get it. So having created this web app that changed the way I felt about my capability as a teacher and introduced new possibilities for my students, I was like, this is amazing, and I just want to code all the time. So I made the decision that year that I would leave teaching and become a software engineer. And I went to this thing called Hacker School. Now it's called a more dignified name, the Recurse Center, because people were confused about what you would do at Hacker School. But it was called Hacker School, and it was 3 months, 80 computer nerds in a room, all working really hard on stuff they were passionate about, and consulting each other and asking questions. So that helped me out a lot to get my level of ability up. And then I got hired at Amplify, and have been working there for a year and a half. And there we do a lot of pair programming. So you sit down with somebody else, 2 monitors, 2 keyboards, 2 mice, and work away at whatever you're doing. Get to share ideas if you get stuck. Instead of Googling for 3 hours, you're like, hey, do you know how to do this? And maybe she does, maybe he doesn't, whatever, you figure it out. So that's been a really cool experience. And I also have the benefit of this Magistrula project. That means mini teacher. So, small side note. This whole site is based on, well, here you see her best, this action figure that was found at my first school. This kid found her in the toy box in the preschool and was like, this looks like that other teacher. So she was given to me and she became mini Miss Andresian. She's been abducted 4.5 times. She has been to some countries that I have not been to. She has endured rebellions at the hands of her students. It all started, some kid sent me this picture, these Roman soldiers throwing a spear at her, and I responded with this picture of Mini Miss Andresian marshalling her troops. So Mini Miss Andresian just became this ridiculous thing. She has her photos, she has accounts of her abductions, she has various songs that are either about her abductions or about Latin. So that's how the site started. Magistrula means mini teacher, that's her name. But so now, there are a few thousand other people who are using this site now, and they're constantly writing to me and saying, can you make the site do this? Can you make it do that? And I get to say, yeah, I can do that. Give me a couple weeks, that'll be on the site. And so people keep asking for things that would make their classroom more powerful, that would make them feel better about what they're able to do, that would make them able to do new things. And I get to say, I can do that for you. And it's really awesome. And I think what the biggest challenge that I've faced becoming an engineer is that I did one thing for 11 years. You know, I have 2 degrees in Latin. I taught for 11 years, and then I decided I'm going to do something new. And I put myself back in the beginner category. And you guys know what it's like when you're learning something new. You know, that first day in whatever class, the first, you know, at the beginning of some school year, you're like, this is all new to me, and I have to climb up and figure this out. And you don't have the option to say, I don't feel like doing this. Not an option, right? You have to figure it out. And I sort of put myself in that same situation after years of feeling pretty comfortable in my career. And so it's been challenging to work up in this new profession. But the thing I love about coding is that you can imagine a thing and then bring it into existence in a way that's so powerful. And I think the reason to learn coding, the reason to learn anything really, you never know when some skill that you acquire is going to make you able to do something that you never imagined. You could learn soldering, and you're like, this is neat, I'm doing this for this summer thing. And then years from now, this summer thing turns out to be this pivotal moment where you're like, wow, if I hadn't done that summer thing, I wouldn't have known how to do this thing. And then I wouldn't have had this opportunity. And then I wouldn't have met that person. And then so I think learning is powerful. You never know when something is really going to matter. When something is really going to unlock an interest in you, is going to unlock the potential to build things that you care about, that other people need. And using code or using, you know, hardware, like building things from the elements, whether they're code elements or hardware elements, is a thing that not everybody can do. And to develop that power, it's this ability that other people would die for, because if they knew how powerful it could be, you know, people would envy what you guys are able to do here if they understood how powerful that is. And hopefully you understand how powerful that is, to be able to imagine and then make. It's an incredible freedom. And you imagine, you know, there are companies that make stuff and give it to you. Some company makes something and sells it to you for whatever. Do you have to depend on companies to make the stuff you want? No, you don't have to depend on anybody to make the stuff you want. You can make the stuff you want. Like, that's a power. That's an incredible power. So that's why I'm fired up about coding and engineering. That's why I'm fired up about learning and trying new things, because you just never know what thing it's going to be that turns you into, like, on a new level, you know. So congratulations to all of you guys for the cool projects that you're working on, and for the risks that you're taking in trying new things, and for the time that you're spending looking stuff up when it doesn't work the first time, and for the support, you know, I'm sure you're giving to each other. And there's this 100-mile trail race in Colorado. It's called the Leadville 100. These people run for 30 hours. That's the time limit. And the founder of this race has this famous quote. He says, "You are stronger than you think you are, and you can do more than you think you can." And I think that's a powerful motto, not just for staying on your feet for 30 hours in the Colorado mountains, but for, you know, your entire experience as a person trying to reach that next peak, and trying to accomplish that next thing, and trying to handle that next challenge. So good luck to you guys in the rest of this program and in all of the learning and trying and striving that you're going to do in your lives. Thank you very much.